Reading chapter 17. Attribution errors. Both the correspondent inference theory and the covariant principle suggest that we make attributions in a rational, methodical way. Unfortunately, our judgments are not always accurate. We often make errors in the inferences we draw from other people's behavior. These errors can usually be traced to a few common attribution errors. We look at a few of these errors, including the fundamental attribution error, false consensus error, and the illusion of control. Fundamental attribution error. One of the most common attribution errors is the tendency to overestimate dispositional causes and to underestimate situational causes when accounting for the behavior of others. Interestingly, we tend to do exactly the opposite when accounting for our own behaviors. This inclination is so pervasive that it has been labeled the fundamental attribution error. For example, when a casual acquaintance complains that she has just failed a history exam, do you attribute her poor performance to a tricky test, a lack of adequate preparation time, or are you more inclined to assume that she's not very bright? If you're like most of us, you probably tend to overestimate the latter cause and discount the former. Had you failed the same exam, however, the odds are good that you would look for situational causes. In other words, one does not want to blame oneself when failing an exam. One wants to say, no, that was not my, free choice. That was, excuses happen. Some researchers have found that attribution biases depend upon whether one is male or female. For instance, males tend to attribute their failures to situations, their successes to dispositions. On the other hand, many females do just the opposite. They attribute success to situations, failure to dispositions. Consider another example. To what do you attribute the high degree of athletic ability that we see in a professional athlete like Bo Jackson? If you are like most people, you attribute his ability to a disposition, his innate talent, not years of hard work. In fact, television commentators and sports writers continually comment about innate talent and instinct in athletes when in reality it is years of hard work and training that determine performance. Research provides evidence of our tendency to make fundamental attribution errors. In one study, for instance, male college students were asked why they had chosen their majors and why they liked their current girlfriend. And they were also asked the same questions about their best male friend. The answers indicated a strong tendency to attribute their best friend's choices to dispositional qualities, whereas they describe their own choices in terms of environmental conditions, such as characteristics of their majors or their girlfriends. In the parentheses, it says that when attributing to dispositional qualities, is something like, you think something like, oh, he's the kind of person who likes blah blah blah. Or when it's environmental, you say stuff like, oh, well, I like my girlfriend because she's attractive and she's intelligent. Or you'd say, and something like, well, I chose chemistry as a major because it's a high paying field. Or maybe not with attitude. But like, who asked this? So that's why I sometimes, sorry, I read and I feel like, well, what's the intellect level of the readers here again? Mind you, I was 14 years old, and when I read through, I feel as if I somewhat scanned through. I don't know how to explain. Not carefully. Psychologists have investigated a possible link between the fundamental attribution error and the quality of intimate relationships. Couples who share their lives either through marriage or cohabitation routinely make judgments or attributions to explain each other's behavior. For instance, if a man fails to notice that her or his partner is in need of some affection and some nurturance, she might conclude that he's preoccupied with a problem at work, or that he's insensitive and he's non nurturing. Those two kinds of attributions could be expected to have profoundly different implications for the quality of their relationship. Do you think that couples who experience a considerable amount of relationship conflict would be inclined to explain each other's behavior in ways different from couples who are happy with their relationship? Hmm? What did she say?
Huh? She said she offered you some and you didn't mind.
Oh, pistachios?
No.
Those vegetables? Do distressed couples rely more on internal versus external attributions than happy couples? Or is the pattern just the opposite? Think about these questions for a couple of minutes before reading on. Yes, please. What are you thinking about in this book right now? Do you think that couples who have they argue a lot, or they're angry at one another a lot, do you think that they say, well, why are you arguing? Why are you being bad to one another? If they would say, like, how would they explain themselves? You know? Or, and then if you were to ask a couple, like, oh, you guys seem so happy, like, you guys do good together. How do you do that? Like, what's going on? So it's like, well, how would they explain? Like, if we asked them, wait, why are you guys fighting too much? Then they would say, that people would answer something to say like, um, internal attributions, and reading is better. So, okay, I'll keep reading this. Do you think that couples who experience a considerable amount of relationship conflict would be inclined to explain each other's behavior in ways different from couples who are happy with their relationship? Do distressed couples rely more on internal versus external attributions than happy couples? Or is the pattern just the opposite? Think about these questions for a couple of minutes before reading on. Oh, that's why I was rereading, because the author asked to read. Okay. I was asked to think about that. So that's how thinking is. And and usually it was like in my head, all the thinking, like without words or silent words while reading on. That's it was. They didn't really react to anything anytime. Huh? Move it. It's at the door.